Okay, good evening. We have 6:30 on call to order, meeting number 1908 of the East Windsor Planning and Zoning Commission. We are here live in John Daly Meeting Room of the Town Hall, as well as on the Zoom platform. We're going to begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
It's government thing.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have a quorum. We have 4 regular members and 1 alternate member. Wayne, I'm going to ask you this evening to sit in on any voting that may take place. Thank you. Do we have any added agenda items?
We do not.
We do not. Okay. There was a legal notice. The East Windsor Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, December 9th, 2025 at 6:30 PM. Details regarding how to attend will be published on the commission's agenda and will be made available on the town's website. PZ 2025-29, the applicant owner is Line Street Estates LLC. Nick DeLuca and Dave Brooks is requesting a text amendment to section 801.5 open space requirements and 802.6 density limits of the East Windsor zoning regulations. A full copy of the application is available on the Planning and Zoning Commission's webpage of the town's website. All interested persons may attend this meeting and provide verbal or written comments regarding this application. And this was published in the Journal Enquirer on November 28th, 2025, and again on December 5th, 2025. We are at the public participation portion of our meeting. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on a topic that is not on tonight's agenda? Is there anyone online that would like to speak on a topic that is not on tonight's agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Approval of minutes. We have the minutes of our last meeting held on November 25th. Does anyone have any edits or corrections?
I have a few.
Okay,
In line 27, it has Commissioner Ruth Gobin, so I think it's a mix-up between Ruth Ann and me. In line 52, it says I made a motion to approve the meeting minutes as presented, but I wanted a B inserted after the word Holcomb.
we should change as presented as amended.
Yep. And then for the vote in favor, you have Wayne Sherry voting, but he was
Was not voting that evening.
right.
Correct.
And then I would call Wayne's attention to the summary of your comment in line 105, which it indicates you were concerned about off-street parking. And I really think you were talking about unregistered vehicles, not
Correct.
off-street parking.
Correct.
Well, off-street is changed to,
Unregistered vehicles, I think,
Yes.
is what you were talking about, but that's,
Oh, no, that was a type of motor vehicle.
oh, off-street.
Off-street parking was,
So it was not off-street parking, it was off-street motor vehicles.
it was related to the definition of a motor vehicle.
So how would you like to edit that? 'Cause it
Defining a motor vehicle.
concerns related to, okay, the definition of a motor vehicle. My comments.
okay. Anyone else have any edits or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of our Tuesday, November 25th meeting meeting 1907 with the correction in line 27, deleting Ruth and replacing it with Anne. In line 52, striking as presented and replacing that with as amended. In line 55, striking Sherry. And in line 105, striking off-street parking and inserting definition of a motor vehicle.
We have a motion to approve the minutes as amended. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Dave. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 It's approved. Under receipt of applications, we have one application to receive tonight. It's PZ 2025-30. The applicant owner is the Town of East Windsor Planning and Zoning Commission is requesting a text amendment to section 401, bulk area requirements, 404, permitted accessory uses, 502, permitted uses in business and industrial districts, 503, permitted accessory uses, 503.1, outdoor storage, and 902.2, violations in the East Windsor zoning regulations. This application will be heard at a future meeting. Yeah. Nothing under performance bonds, action permit, road acceptance. We have no continued public hearings. So we have a new public hearing, PZ 2025-29. The applicant owner is Line Street Estates LLC. Nick DeLuca and Dave Brooks is requesting a text amendment to section 801.5, open space requirements, and 802.6, density limits of the East Windsor zoning regulation. Who's here to speak on behalf of this application?
Evening, Pete Parent, professional engineer with CHA, offices in East Hartford and Rocky Hill, Connecticut. I'm joined by the applicants as well. As noted, the application before you is to amend the zoning regulations to allow for density bonuses via fee in lieu within the multifamily design district. So essentially, currently there are a list of density bonuses that can be earned via dedication of additional open space or dedication of properties as affordable. That would allow increased density within a MFDD project. The intent here is to allow for those density bonuses to be obtained via a fee in lieu through your commission. It doesn't exceed the density that's currently allowed. The maximum densities that are currently allowed in that MFDD zone will remain. It's just a different path to get there. And would allow some flexibility from the developer side. And, at the end of the same time, gives the town an opportunity to really provide more usable, more useful open space by not having open space that's kind of intermingled into these developments. You can, use the fee in lieu to purchase a more substantial or a more suitable piece of property for the open space portion. This application has been reviewed by the Council of Governments and your town staff. Ruth Ann had some comments, and we have addressed some of those. The first comment was to limit this to the WHP and Broadbrook villages and not just all village districts, and we've made that change. And then there's a couple of other comments, and I'll just go through those, and then I think this is better kind of as a discussion. Sure. So the next comment was about the street trees at 50 feet not being a compelling qualifier. And I want to kind of point out that the current landscaping requirement is in addressing perimeter trees. So the outside limits of the property. And this would be in addition to that requirement where we'd be requiring any new road or access driveway to have street trees at a 50-foot interval in order to be able to access this density bonus regulation. And then section 602, Ruth had noted that there's a 50-foot landscape buffer required between residential and multifamily. And I would point out that, that 25-foot of landscaping is only subject to the PRD, the planned residential development section of the MFDD, which only requires a 25-foot setback to the structure. So having that to be a 25-foot landscape buffer, we see as an additional benefit. And then the comments about how the fees are attributed and calculated are certainly open to discussion, but that section is taken, basically verbatim from your section 7.5 of your subdivision regulations, which discusses the same topic of fee in lieu. So we're happy to discuss any amendments that you might make to that. I just wanted to point out that we did that in order to kind of keep your regulations consistent between planning and zoning and subdivision. So that's kind of the synopsis of the proposed amendment. Happy to have a discussion about any questions, concerns, and possible, tweaks that you might like to make. Understanding that if we tweak too much, we need to kind of have a formal response. So we would ask that the public hearing remain open if the commission chooses to ask for some substantial changes to the language.
Okay. I just want to start off with just kind of going through this whole planned residential development part of our regulation. So right in section 801.1, it states the planned residential development is an open space conservation subdivision regulation that allows for single-family detached residential development in the R2, R3, A1, A2, MFDD residential agricultural zones. So it kind of starts right off saying that the whole purpose of having a planned residential development, it is for open space conservation. So by now eliminating the open space requirement, how does that not completely negate the purpose of a planned residential development?
So you're not eliminating the open space requirement. You're just obtaining the open space requirement through different means, right? So the developer still has to provide you that value of that property and allows the town to then purchase that value of land in other locations that may be more suitable, more open to more residents, or, have a higher conservation value than might exist on their developed property.
I kind of read this more as a planned residential development was to have open space for the benefit of the residents, that they would have some type of a common space, park area, town green type, setup where the residents of that development would have communal property to enjoy and use either for dog park or whatever.
Right. So section 11.3 within the PRD of your zoning regulations says that, the open space should be meaningful and contribute to the town's open space plan and policies. So I think, for open space to be meaningful and contribute to your policies, I think, allowing the town to have some flexibility and, there's a 25-acre piece of property that we'd really like to preserve, and now we have the funds to do that. And instead of having it be, a couple acres interspersed into individual developments that really are only going to be accessible to the people that live in that development, or even the town would now have options where it'd be accessible to the entire town. I think that is a benefit, versus, we all know how open space and developments ends up. It kind of ends up, interspersed and.
But to me, I thought that this planned residential development differentiated from a straight subdivision where this was higher density, but it created more of a community effect where they had a common space for the residents of that area.
Right. And, so that is certainly a goal, but this.
Otherwise, what makes it any different than a subdivision?
And these regulations don't require that kind of, dedicated, okay, we've got 4 acres of open space, it has to be 4-acre rectangle within the center. There's not, it just kind of pushes the same open space.
Discussion happens during the site plan.
Right, that's part of the, the special permit, which this would still be subject to. And so I think, that's where the differentiation is that yes, you're not obtaining it within this development, but you're still having a process to obtain it. And the potential is that by obtaining it through a different means, you have the opportunity that, the open space that's provided at the end of the day could be more meaningful or have, a larger impact because it can be, combined with other fees and lieu that have been paid.
And Jim,
So my issue is, if you do for one, you do for all. So if this text amendment gets approved, so it's not gonna stop a bunch of other developers coming in town and trying to do the same thing.
Mhm.
So to me, this is a huge, huge text amendment because it's gonna change the whole landscape of the town because it's gonna end up being, it's gonna be looking like Enfield. Not against Enfield, but you got house, 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 your neighbor behind you, you got house, house, house. And it's just way too dense. People move to East Windsor, to have a rural community and have the farm look, not house after house like at Enfield.
And I would point out that, the density modifications here are just an alternative way to achieve the bonuses that are already available in your regulations. It's not increasing the maximum density that's currently allowed by the MFD regulations. It's just an alternative way to get there. So, if somebody had 10 acres of property, the maximum I think is, 4 lots, 4 units per acre, they could get 40 units. They still can only get 40 units. They just have an alternative way to get to that density bonus that's available to them.
By giving up the open space or fee in lieu of, you're just gonna take that land and put it into another, build on it.
Well, the density the maximum number of units doesn't change.
differentiates between a multifamily and a planned residential is there's single family versus multiple, up to 3 stories. So you can achieve the density
Yeah.
with a smaller footprint.
Correct.
Now we're taking that density and spreading it out over the,
Right, and
the foot.
the lot that's been, kind of discussed here, the density there would end up being about a 1/4 acre lot, and there are considerably a high number of 1/4 acre lots within these village districts, so you're not exceeding what's already existing in the town by a substantial amount.
Those are existing non-conforming use.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah.
I'm saying, if you're concerned about the aesthetics, it's not a different aesthetic than what exists in a lot of areas already.
I see that.
You have anything else, sir?
Yeah, size of lot will not be in harmony with the orderly development of the area comparable to the existing uses. 801.2A. Location of size. But it will be in harmony with the orderly development of the area compatible with other existing uses. So that's going to be an issue. And then open space requirements, there's 801.5 letter E. That's the one that you guys want to add?
Yes.
You want to explain that?
So this is the amendments, kind of allowing the commission the opportunity or the ability to accept a fee in lieu of the open space land, similar to what you do similar to the regulations you have in place currently for subdivisions. So that initial amendment there, 801.5.E, kind of gives you the ability to accept the fee in lieu. And then the additional modifications that are laid out in 802.6.4 are kind of the density bonuses that could then be achieved via payment of those fees in lieu.
And then it says section 7 of the town subdivision regulations, which is 701.2, harmony with the area. So each one of these text amendment changes have to make sure it's in harmony with the area that's around it. Correct?
Right, yeah, so the commission would still have special permit power over any development that came in front of you, and it would have to meet the other sections of these regulations.
Okay.
Nick DeLuca and David Brook, we just want to also address some of the concerns you guys have. In terms of the harmony, there's two neighborhoods, two developments across the street, right, David? Yeah. There's the 55 and older, well, maybe we shouldn't, yeah. So anyways, we've talked about a certain property, you guys know that. You know, in terms of harmony with the neighborhood, I think the areas that we're targeting, Ruth, maybe you have that map that shows the two districts. So
What I just handed out.
Yeah.
So we've identified some of the properties that would be affected by this text amendment. And as the kind of visual representation in the map shows you, the two red sections are the two sections that would be, you know, subject to this change. So two smaller sections of town. But we did go through and did our best to find what specific properties would actually be affected by this. So within the village district in Broadbrook, there were 5 properties that would fit into this category that could be affected by this amendment. So there weren't very many. There were a couple others that were like partially in the village district and then some out of the village district. But I just wanted to make sure you guys had an idea of exactly what would be affected here, because it's not a broad sweeping effect on the whole town. It would be limited to very few properties. And then as we added in the Warehouse Point district, I went through and found a few properties. These are more, I believe, business zones there. So I'm not sure how applicable that is. But essentially in the Warehouse Point district, there's only 5 properties that would be affected by this amendment.
Oh,
Do you have any questions?
Just, I agree with what Jim was saying, you know, it doesn't prove the area. You may have other places with this type of a setup, but you're asking to put a brand new set and around all these other houses, and it just doesn't seem like it fits right in there.
I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. And we're talking, you know, kind of about, you know, the preliminary plans have been presented before you. This text amendment just allows a vehicle
I get it.
potential to get there. This commission would still have special permit power over anything that was brought before you.
Yeah, but in harmony, like Jim was saying, in harmony with the neighborhood.
Right, and each one of those lots is gonna have a different neighborhood that needs.
I'm talking about this particular neighborhood. It's any,
Right, and
Neighborhood.
every neighborhood is gonna have its own set of circumstances, so any development that's brought before you under these regulations is gonna have to address those concerns.
That's where he's kind of, I think where he's trying to go is that 1/4 acre lots are not the norm in this town. So if the ones that do exist are non-conforming use. So to add more 1/4 acre lots, you know, it's almost like creating a non-conforming use, but regardless of that, it's really not inconsistent use of what's going to be near anything, unless it's near, if somebody aggregated property near some other non-conforming uses.
But I would like to point out that the current MFDD zone would allow that level of density.
But that is achieved multi-storied.
Doesn't necessarily have to be.
That,
not size parcel.
No. Okay,
Can I just,
sure.
so the applicant is correct. Your current regulations would allow for the same density on PRDD or PRD, which would be detached, single family. So there's no increase. They're not asking for any increase in density. The only difference is that the open space isn't provided on site. So what you have to separate is that because they're not providing the density on site, they then use that area to get more lots.
Yeah.
That calculation does not change. The commission through this amendment would give the commission discretion to accept the fee in lieu of on-site open space. But if you choose to accept the fee, they don't then say, okay, thanks, now that percentage of land we can gobble up with houses. The decision to accept the open space or the fee will not change the overall context of the development. The densities are, calculations are already in the reg. So the only difference is, just like when you decide to take a fee in lieu for a subdivision, you'd say the land is not worth to the community, both at a broad scale or on site, and so we want the fee. Could be open space, it could be the abutters, reason doesn't make sense. I mean, we've had people in front of the commission, both within a community and abutting a community, that don't want communal open space. They don't want a dog park behind their house. They don't want walking trails behind their house. So this provision sort of supported that flexibility, which it says the commission in its discretion may. So I just want to make it clear that they're not trying to change that math. And I know it's very simple to assume that if the open space comes off the table, that you just sort of stretch that development out for the rest of it. But the calculation won't change.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
So you want to propose having an open space somewhere else, is that?
The fee would be paid to the town and put it in the town's open space fund so that the town has those funds available to purchase open space at its discretion.
Thank you.
Just like we do now with subdivision.
So right now, the regulations talk about 30% open space, FPRD, 40 if it's multifamily. So that's the piece that addresses, you get the open space, because these developments would typically take all the houses that would fit there and put them down here and have open. Now, if you take a fee in lieu of that, are really only left with what's there. To increase your density is additional open space or an additional fee in lieu of
Density bonus.
the bonuses.
Anything else, Wayne?
No, that's it.
Ann?
Guess what I'm thinking about is the concept of, I'll call it an infill development, where you have more density in a village. Would make sense if what you got in open space was something big and grand for the town. If we could preserve a lot of farmland for it, if we could do something big for open space. But my sense of it, and maybe I'm wrong, is the fee in lieu of open space and a density bonus is kind of chump change. It's not enough money to really buy something of value to the town. Goes into a town fund, and I don't know how it's the dollar value per lot is or per amount of land, but if it's 10% of the value of land to be subdivided, is that 10% before it's subdivided, so the land is not very valuable because it's one lot, and so you get next to nothing. So I'm not sure it accomplishes what you'd want to accomplish with an infill development, which is dense development here to keep all the farmland and these ones are open.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that is something set by state statute that we have no control over. That the state dictates that that's the max we can,
But if-
at 10%.
But that density bonus concept, do we have ability to make that a
A different-
large number?
I-
Or is that again a
I think
limited thing?
So we were talking about this last week, and so the open space, the fee in lieu of open space is established by statute, and that percentage is
So
specified.
it's, yeah, you can't get enough money to,
I think generally speaking, that there's a little bit of a gray area in that this is not a subdivision. This is a more discretionary permitting path. So in thinking about it a little bit more, I think we'd have to kind of come up with a I don't know, more official determination on that, because there's not always going to be a subdivision pertaining to this. And this, like I said, we were talking about this last week. And there's a sort of a line in Connecticut is different than most surrounding states. We can't impose impact fees.
Yep.
So could you get something beyond the 10%? Maybe.
But to me, that's chump change. It's
Well, so I think you
anything.
agreed. It is not a significant, it is slow, but it's based on the value of the land. So we could have developments that have a $2,000 per lot fee. I've seen them as high as 13,000. Depends on the value of the property, but the sort of the flip side to that is how valuable is 10% of a farm being preserved, right? If we have 10% of this lot and 10% of this lot, we end up with a bunch of slivers of green. But at some point, right, you get enough money in that bucket that you can actually preserve an entire piece of property. And so, yes, you have to chip away, but in the context of a community scale, there's not a lot of value to the community if we have 1 acre of open space with this development and 1 acre of open space with this development. But if over 10 years, we decide the town's going to allocate all that money to purchase one piece of property.
Farmland gets preserved.
So I think that's the thought behind it, but yes, it takes a long time.
It's to me, the plan of conservation and development has a big and heavy theme on conserving open space. So if you could make a big dent in open space by doing infill development, it starts to feel like it could be good for the town, but I'm not getting the sense this gets us there. And maybe I didn't understand Ruth Ann's comments very well, but I got the sense part of it was shrinking the setback. And the buildable area. And I'm not, yeah,
Residential development.
and I'm not comfortable with that because people buy their property with the assumption that they're going to have a setback from their neighbor of X, at the property line, and it's not going to encroach on them.
I think within the development, I see it. There's an established lot size setback, 8 feet from the side yard, 25 feet from the front yard, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
That's standard within neighborhood.
But you wouldn't, to me,
That the
I have to keep, my distance to the property line. I can't put my shed, I can't put anything in that area. I don't want the property that abuts me to be able to come up to the property line. I want, a certain amount of space like I have
Yeah.
to meet in my neighbor,
You bought your property with that setback and then now the town's changing it.
that compromise.
Yeah, so I'd like to point out that
Not understanding what the
Section-
action is.
Section 801.6 has bulk and area requirements related to MFDD. Those are not proposed to change. It's a 25-foot minimum rear and side and front yard setback. And those are actually a little bit larger than the underlying zones. I think the underlying zones have 15-foot side yards. And
Yeah, I wouldn't,
so, I mean, those changes, those
okay, you're
regulars not.
changing that. I also was not enamored with the concept that if there's a fee that is paid for a density bonus or whatever, that I'll say runs with the land and doesn't get paid up front. Because I know I had a condo and the sewer assessment ran with the land, so you had the choice of paying it up front as the person who bought it, or you could every year pay something. I think somebody buying it should be paid, should be part of the land cost. It shouldn't be a future thing that it's a
So when
owner.
For subdivision, if it's be in lieu of open space, we put a lien on the property for that. And each lot gets a lien,
And they pay it,
and
then
at closing,
it's not
gets
paid,
paid when the lot is sold, that
it's an add-on to the price.
to the
Or the
town.
closing
Price.
costs, or their closing costs, yeah.
Yeah, it's part of the closing cost and then we release the lien. So the money,
And
when a property is sold,
so if a fee was paid for a density bonus, would it be the same way? That the buyer has to pay it in the future? I just hate those surprise fees.
Well,
They're
one
just like
idea-
hidden
one
taxes
idea
to
would be
me,
that density bonuses
paid up front.
get paid prior to the issuance of any permit. You know, we have that kind of option. If it be in lieu of an open space garnered density bonus, it would have to be before permits get issued.
I guess the other thing that would be helpful to understand is there's been changes to the land use statutes by the legislature just recently. And I have no clue what they are. It would be nice to know how that, if it affects this or doesn't affect this. But that's my questions for now.
Dave?
I think you guys have summed up how I feel already. So far. Thank you, though.
Under your proposal, let's see. Guess this would fall under 802.6, now the number 4. B. You talk, after you're talking about the street trees, but when you're talking along proposed roads/common driveways, the town doesn't allow common driveways.
So I understand that, now that the town doesn't have a definition of common, when we added that in there, I was more thinking of an apartment style development where they would have one common access driveway to, access a parking lot, something that the town wouldn't want to own as a town road. But,
Refer that to as a private road then.
yeah, okay. So, yeah, we can certainly strike that or alter that to be more clear.
Yeah, because I don't want something in the regulations that's not allowable. I guess we're talking about that this would not allow any greater density, but it would allow for greater number of units. Because if you're saying that land that would have been set aside for open space, they're now going to develop it. They're going to put more units on that land, no? You're just going to spread out everything else?
Used to get, the math works out, you get X number of units, and then the regulation allows for a certain density. You then have to apply that density to the property. You also have to apply the open space calculations that the regulation requires, which under this are increased beyond that 10%. So let's just assume you get 40 units, 20 units, whatever, pick one. But you don't get, because they are now providing offsite open space, they don't get to then add more units onto the property. The number doesn't change. The only thing that they're doing is providing the open space offsite. So the average.
Fee in lieu of, yeah. But
Right.
so I guess what I'm kind of confused about then is if there was going to be, let's say 4 acres set aside for open space, what happens with that land now? If we're going to pay a fee in lieu of and not have open space, is it still going to sit empty?
It is eligible to be developed, but not to a point that would increase the density. So
Okay,
let's,
so let's, for round numbers, say we'll go 1 acre lots, 10 acres. If you needed to set aside 2 acres for open space, so now you can only fit 8 houses. If you pay the fee in lieu of, now you have 10 buildable lots. And so now you have 10 houses where you would have had 8 with the open space. Is that what we're saying now?
No, because
we're
you're
still
not-
saying 1 acre lot.
you're not using you're not adjusting that baseline number that you're calculating the density from now that you've paid that fee. They're still, if they were getting the 10 lots, they're still getting the 10 lots. The difference is, let's say they were 10 lots that were an acre. If you allow the density on site, they may need to be 10 lots at half an acre or the open space on site. The houses have to be closer together to accommodate the open space. If you pull the open space off the table, the lots then can get larger because you now have the ability to develop the whole parcel. but the number of units will not change. They come before you and they say, we want to do 10 acres and we need 40% open space, 60% is developed. And you say, no, you can't, you don't have to provide the space on site. They're just going to take those same units and spread them out.
Okay. So it's
So your
not
average,
adding, it's just
correct,
adding more space between you.
correct.
Okay. Okay, that's
For the open space.
right. Because I can say the land's not going to sit empty. It's something's going to, so it just now stretches everything out larger over the same piece of property.
Under the MFD. Right, they can make use of the bonuses and the calculations which are currently in the regs. Again, they're trying to establish another pathway to the bonus, but not change how the bonus is calculated.
So if a fee in lieu of was accepted, that automatically triggers a bonus?
No, because the bonuses are discretionary.
Right.
It says if the commission may, and the maximum density.
So that's another special application then to increase density then versus what the underlying zone is then. That, how is it, explain to me how the bonus gets applied.
It's eligible and what they're proposing would go over the maximum that someone could get to. But as Mike described, without the open space, like if the open space is covered through the fee in lieu of, because you could also donate an acre from somewhere else, say, see this open space over here? That's eligible too. So it doesn't ever go higher than it could possibly go with the open space. And I get what you're saying, like, okay, if I've done my open space,
Well,
then I just,
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Then what does the bonus actually provide for? Higher density, more units, or just bigger lots? What,
Money.
I don't understand what the actual, so with a bonus, it would allow for more.
The existing bonus.
yeah, the existing.
We have existing language to allow for density bonus, which has existed. They are not changing. They're trying to change the mechanism that they can become eligible for the bonus by not providing on-site open space. But the bonus that exists will
Like,
remain unchanged.
And
So-
that piece is the one that I was.
Currently, a planned residential development does not qualify for a bonus.
It does.
It does.
It's just that right now they could not pay a fee in lieu of open space as part of the bonus
So that you would have to provide the open space to get the bonus
on site.
on site.
Correct.
And that's the only way this works.
The bonus could be offsite.
If we accepted an off-site location.
To earn, you could have land offsite.
Existing, you mean?
You could purchase an acre somewhere else in town.
Under the proposal,
Yes,
the existing.
yes,
Yeah.
existing.
Existing. But that's all through, it'd have to be accepted by the commission. It's not,
Correct.
nothing as of right.
Well, because the MFDD is a zone change, so that is discretionary, right? You are making the decision to apply the MFDD and.
No, I'm looking at existing MFDD areas and things that,
will they come in? Modify what's been approved. now.
Well, they'd first have to be in one of those two areas in pink.
That was my point.
And then they'd have to meet some standard. Like I said, they've done the math and there's only a universe of what there's approximately.
Well, that's what they say.
Well, I think if you look at the requirements for the MFDD and you look at the average lot size in these village areas, it's pretty, you ground truth that there's not very many 4-acre parcels that aren't developed in these pink areas, certainly in Warehouse Point.
We've already approved the development in the MFDD. Could they now come back and try to reapply under this?
Where
Bridge Street?
Bridge,
Bridge Street's PCD.
that's not MFDD.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
I just think this is a back door.
Well, I'm just trying to see how this could affect
There are things.
everything else,
We have to look at for the whole town, not just,
Yeah, not just one piece of
not just one
property.
piece of property.
So. You have anything else, gentlemen? Okay. So can I have the sign-up sheet, please?
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, my line. No, no, no.
Okay.
So this is a public hearing. I'm gonna, as I call each person up, please come up to the podium because there's a microphone there to record better. I just kind of want to remind people that we're discussing a text amendment that is not site specific to one piece of property. I know that, it's the elephant in the room, everybody's thinking about on Depot Street, but what we're discussing tonight really applies to anywhere in Broadbrook or Warehouse Point. So your questions and comments should not be site specific. It should be regarding the entire text amendment that they're asking for. So, first one I've got is, Norma Salmon.
Be me, and my comment was site specific.
Okay,
You don't want to hear.
okay. What I would say is regardless of whatever happens with this here at all, nothing is triggered automatic for any kind of a development. Because anything that would get developed down the future still has to come before another public hearing, has to go for a special use permit. There would be plenty of opportunity to address an individual development. So this is really now just looking at, do we want as a community to accept a fee in lieu of for open space versus having to actually provide open space on a development? Next one. This is Carl Brandt, yep, sir.
It's basically about the site itself too,
Okay,
what her and I have been looking at is, there's a little, what do you call it?
It's an easement.
An easement that goes right in between us on Skinner Road up to that property. And, we're just looking at, we don't want that to be a roadway going in.
if that application ever comes before us, you'll definitely have an opportunity
Yeah.
to speak about that.
It's only, I think, 15 feet wide going up, and we just kind of could drop the value of our homes here.
Kimberly Audette.
Good evening. I'm here with my family tonight. We live on Highland Avenue. We've been residents for over 10 years. I do have some site-specific stuff, so let me skip over some of that. I'm speaking tonight against the proposed regulation changes of open space requirements and the density bonuses. I'm heartbroken to see this proposed development as part of these proposed changes. One of my favorite parts about this town and our neighborhood is the open space surrounding our homes. All the text amendment changes and the proposal to remove language in 801.5 should absolutely not be allowed. Do not allow a change in permit requirements by approving the language proposed for 802.6 number 4, density bonuses. Our town should not be bought with money. This plan by Lion Street Estates is an example of overcrowding, with houses being built right on top of another in the backyards of my neighbors and members of this community. Allowing this developer and potentially other developers in the future pay a fee in lieu of deeding open space based on density requirements would be a detriment to our community. Not to mention, it would allow any further developer to do this at their discretion. This particular development has a potential to forever change our surrounding neighborhood because of these proposed changes. No longer will we look in our backyards and see the open space that's surrounding our community today. We moved here from a town where we saw townhouses, apartments, housing developments crammed into lots when I stepped out my front and my back door. I don't want to see that here in Broadbrook. That was the biggest reason of why we moved here. Do not allow these proposed changes by Lion Street Estates. Thank you.
Caroline Audette, maybe?
This one, gentlemen. Somebody get her.
Was that okay?
Yeah.
My name is Caroline. I am 8 years old. Ever since I was born, I've loved this place. Our backyard has been full of woods and wildlife. I've loved this because we have memories of animals walking through our yard without us saying one word. If all of these houses will be built, no one will see deer, foxes, and everything that lives in the woods. That's why I don't want them to build houses. I've loved this place and I don't want it to change. Everybody loves wildlife, especially.
Mr. Anderson.
I couldn't follow that. Try. Look too impossible. Okay, Paul Anderson, 89 Main Street, Broadbrook, been here since 1971. I've spent time on planning and zoning. And zoning regulations are really critical to our town. I will tell you, I have a brother-in-law, lives in Toronto, does real estate. No, this isn't Toronto, but the concept is identical. In Toronto, if you want to build a development of houses, you can have them so close together, you can probably paint both buildings at the same time. But every small development has a park. It is mandatory, or you build nothing. The concept being the people who live there have a place to do what they want, a picnic, whatever, right? That's what open space in a development is for. It's not for the rest of the people. It's for the people who buy those properties. I'm totally in favor of having open space as part of a condensed development. And that's why open space is in the regulations. So turning it into cash is not accomplishing what the regulations say today. I don't think they should be changed. Now, I have 801-5 or 0.5, whatever, open space requirements. All PRD applications shall include deeded open space for blah, 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 blah. They want to take out the word deeded. Well, that applies to 802.6, 1B1. I think that's what it's called. Let me see if I got it right. 801.6. Nope, 802.6. Excuse me, wrong page. Okay, yes. 802.6B density limits for non-elderly occupancy. The word deeded is in paragraph B. The open space has to be deeded. Okay? 802.6. Section 2, elderly occupancy. Paragraph B, open space will be deeded. 802.63, plan residential development. B, land being deeded as open space. So if you take out the word deeded here, you're violating those three entries. It doesn't make any sense. It should not be allowed. So to me, I think we have a major problem here in that the purpose of this application is to change our rules so that an individual can build what he wants. This is not townwide. This is very specific. They said that warehouse points no longer included. They deleted that. Now it's only Broadbrook. Well, here we are, folks. This is Broadbrook. How many of these things are we planning in Broadbrook? One. Sorry, you don't change the regulations specifically for anybody, ever. Your regulations are for the entire town in the appropriate places, and that's all they're for. So to me, this is a big mistake to go forward and change our regulations to suit somebody who bought a chunk of land and they had the regulations up front. Now they don't like them. I don't care. That is our big mistake when you start bastardizing regulations because somebody wants something. Too bad. Let them do it some other way. Who cares?
Ken Walton?
Yeah. Okay. I'll be quick. So I've got one of those properties that was on that list of like the top 5 or 6. I'd be affected, right? Why did I come up to Broadbrook? Came up here to buy a farm, and that's what I did, right? And I think that's part of what goes with the town. It's definitely one of the, it's part of the atmosphere of this town. Let's talk about, like, you guys want to jam 32 tiny homes up into there? They're not even going to be that small. It's not going to be like what you did on Line Street in Manchester, okay? It's going to create a lot of traffic. It's already busy enough down here at the traffic.
This is not really site specific, this regulation.
Okay, let's talk about this. There have been some like dismissive comments about little pockets of open space. Little pockets of open space is important. Why? It creates animal corridors for them to get from point A to point B, right? So we've got turkey, we've got the coyotes, and I'm talking about just right down the street here, the deer. Right? Bobcat, like we get it all. And, my property is part of that wildlife passageway. Foster Farm, that was part of it too. All the houses in between. And when you look at like what we have here, if you look at like the 21 or 20 surrounding properties and you do the math and you average all of their acreage size, you actually end up with 0.995 acres per property that abut 96, 92 Depot Street. Okay. It's not that dense. And what happens when you have a mix of houses in there with some actual like wide open land, it does give animals a way to get through. Otherwise, it's not going to be very Broadbrook.
Right.
And I think we shouldn't make changes just to suit these 2 out-of-towners. They're not from here. They don't have to live here. They don't have to deal with it. Like, you make a change for them, you open the door for everybody, and it's just going to change the town.
Sherman Walton.
My concern is that if you accept a fee in lieu of the open space, that fee will have to be applied down the road, and it's going to be more expensive to buy some parcel of land. So the fee is not really it's going to be diminished in value versus if you have the open land at the time of the construction, the value is there permanently. That's my biggest concern. Thank you.
That is everyone who signed up. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Is there anyone online that would like to comment on this application?
I would.
Yes, ma'am. Please identify yourself.
Jennifer Abbey, 32 Rice Road. I guess I know we're not talking about site specific, but I'm just a little bit concerned for a few reasons. Everyone's talking about this parcel being multifamily DD, but it is zoned R2, correct?
Currently, yes.
Okay. And also the fees that would be paid in lieu of not having open space just for Broadbrook Village only. Would those, who decides who can buy open space? Would it just be for open space in Broadbrook, or would it be open space for the whole town?
The money would go into a fund that most likely it would go through the Board of Selectmen if there was a piece of property that they felt would benefit the town to purchase.
I just feel like maybe this hasn't been thought out. We're talking about changing a text amendment, which would change many lots, 5 different zoning acres in our town, to have a 32 unit housing development in a space that's very, very small. Go there, look at it.
Yeah, it's starting to sound a little site specific, Jennifer.
Okay. And I'm not sure why we can't be site specific, because I think it starts with that.
Because the applicant is strictly asking for a text amendment at this point. There is no site plan, no zoning change, no any other request at this point. It's strictly
Okay.
just a text amendment request.
So if we take out just site specific, I feel like if we change the text amendment in this, it is going to open the door for so many developments that a lot of people don't want. That's all I have to say.
Yep.
Anyone else? Is there anyone else online that'd like to comment? Dan or Mike, do you guys have anything else you'd like to ask of the applicant?
I just want to make note of the PowerPoint that is provided by the applicant. In it, there are points where they're pointing out, reinforcing.
Can you put it up on the screen as well?
I will.
So you can
Yeah.
keep talking.
So, there were some comments tonight talking about not growing in Broadbrook, where Broadbrook is a growth area, residential as well as Warehouse Point. That's why those 2 sections were selected as the links of where this text, proposed text amendment would be effective. So I just wanted to, I was surprised that we didn't get through all his points, and maybe he did this in his initial comments, but we are talking about having more density in the villages to bring people into the big developments that have walkability aspects, some neighborhood type neighborhood features, trying to get the word out. So there's another side to looking at the strategy. And I just want to get that, because they did hand it out, so I want to make sure they get on the record. The neighborhood oriented development, they have in their requirements that it would be a maximum home size of 19 square feet. Encourage efficient design and neighborhood character. Not going over what's already established as a maximum density for the MFDD and the PRD, which we spoke about quite a bit already. And really, with the housing being such a concern these days, talking about baby boomers seeking to downsize could fit in a neighborhood like that. Millennials seeking walkable, transit accessible living. Gen Z, first-time home buyers, families looking for attainable housing. Just for that, those points, because they handed them in, get on the record. If you look through the plan of conservation and development, you will see that there's that focus for those village areas to grow in that way. Let's go to the next, the smart growth. Yeah. So, and I see this section of putting money into an account for open space. We do have corridors that we wish to have connected open space parcels for the town. Along the Scantic River is one. We'd like to have a trail down by the Connecticut River. So those are things the funds that would accrue from fees in lieu of open space, which already exists in our regulations for the subdivision regulations. That's where that money would go. So, again, they had several parcels that they identified that would meet the requirements within the two villages.
Can you say something? I'm confused. I thought that they were for the town. Are they for the town or are they for working for them?
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, I work for the town.
Okay.
I work for the town. I am making sure that what they had handed in front of the room and put up on the screen is on the record for the hearing. That is all.
This wasn't previously given out.
Chance to talk. They're supposed to be our lawyers for the town. It sounds like she's like pushing.
No, ma'am,
No.
if we didn't review this, then it would say that something was submitted to us and we didn't share it with you. That we kept some information that we received in private. So all she's doing is reviewing this so it's public knowledge, what information was given to us. I'm sorry, please continue.
So the other items that were presented, it's got that. We saw on the screen already. It was the village map as part of the PowerPoint.
It was just a red line.
Oh, and the red line of the text amendment. That includes the changes to 801.5. And that is the fee in lieu of open space. And then the new section 4, which we had a lot of discussion on, the density bonuses.
Will you add these additional items to the file online?
I will.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir. Please identify yourself again.
Yeah, my name is Ken Walton, and online we saw that there was a site-specific map, right, with 32 minutes. Are we really not talking about that site-specific stuff, and is that in the PDF?
In the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
That map it is not, no. I mean, what I could say is the applicant was pretty straightforward saying, this is what our end goal is, and this is how we think we can get there. But no matter what happens with this text amendment, gives them the ability to do nothing. Because then they still have to go for a zone change and they have to go for a special permit with a site plan review. So there would be multiple meetings still that they would have to go through. This is just, without this, I guess they can't achieve what their end goal is. So they were pretty straightforward. That's not true? Okay.
And I think that's like a big misunderstanding here. We can still achieve developing places, anyone can achieve developing places that are in an area, given the certain densities. It's just a pathway that provides value for the town to do things that are already inside of its vision. If it's inside of the vision already, in order to develop certain areas and to provide revitalization to an area, and someone just says, here's another mechanism in order to reach that, that's a proposal in order to get there. But that area If you want to try to talk site specific, which I won't, but many of these areas can already be developed. It's just a mechanism, and there seems to be some misunderstanding about what trying, to be accomplished.
Yeah, and I just want to kind of point out something, we've been talking a lot about the fee in lieu of open space, because that's the mechanism we've asked for a change to. But there's already a different method to achieve increased density, by dedicating houses to affordability. So you can obtain just as many additional lots for each lot you assign as being affordable as you can for each acre of open space that you dedicate under the current regulation. So that there's a means to increase density to the maximum allowable density without dedicating additional open space already. This is just a different path to get there.
So how many houses would you get in there if you didn't get the text amendment change? I'm saying-
The MFDD allows up to 4 per acre. On a 10-acre site, you can get 40 units.
Right, I saw that.
So not specific to any site, but MFDD, which the proposed text amendment would affect properties that may fit into the MFDD zone, right? That MFDD would allow for up to 4 per acre. So on a 10-acre site, again, not site specific, but easy numbers, you can get up to 40 units currently with the zoning regulations.
With what's in place already.
Yeah,
Not
not with this text amendment, but with what's currently in place. No changes whatsoever. You can get 40 units on 10 acres.
And you don't have to provide any open space?
There is an open space requirement to that.
Yeah.
About when you put the road in, it's not really.
Right, please, we're not gonna have a conversation back in people, so.
And I think the idea with the open space is sometimes there's properties where like, I think a few of us alluded to, but there's open space around the outside. I know you mentioned corridor for animals. I get that. That makes a lot of sense. So I'm not refuting that. But sometimes it might be certain towns might not want to take care of that open space, or who's gonna take care of that? It's gonna be a bunch of brush. Do the neighbors actually want it? So this was a way, instead of providing open space that maybe wasn't desirable, it could go into a fund instead where the town could purchase something desirable. So it's not a workaround to get additional density, and it's not a workaround at all. The density is already there. It's just a way to, instead of giving a strip, giving the town money so they could purchase something that they would rather have.
Which is already in the vision. And it
aligns with the town's plan of conservation and development for the village area and Broadbrook.
I would just give one clarifier is that density is allowed in an MFDD zone, not in an R2 zone currently.
Right, but there's, yeah.
So,
Want to speak?
and zone changes again have to be approved through a public hearing as well. And so it's not a given that if you have a piece of property that automatically can say, well, now I want it to be this zone.
If it meets the criteria, right?
So the R2 zone, if we're talking, general, the MFD is an option for the R2 zone, as is just straight PRD, which allows for increased density. And, given the fact that your plan of concentration development has identified these zones as, areas where development is desired, if an applicant was to come before you with a development, the expectation would be, certainly that there would be some discussion and some, need to address specific concerns, but that, that development would be able to move forward, given that it falls within the regulations and your plan of conservation development.
Just tell you one of the things when we have any kind of a zone change request, congruity, we look at if it's abutting similar zones. The biggest thing we're trying to do is avoid spot zoning.
Yep.
That you have one piece of property that's zoned different than everything else around it. So those are the bigger criterias for zone changes is, how is it going to fit into
Harmony with the area.
harmony with the area, and is it going to create spot zoning? Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions for the applicant? So at this point, I see that there's a couple of reworks or clarifications that need to happen with what you're proposed. So, I would recommend to continue the public hearing. Okay.
Can I just make a couple of comments?
Sure.
Mostly because I want to make sure that everybody is on the same page. So I just want to make a couple of points because I think maybe not everybody also has some of the informal discussion stuff that happened prior to. The development of any piece of property, including the property that shall not be named, right? The zoning regulations through the subdivision process would allow development of that parcel in its entirety as of right. Right? That there is no public hearing or zone change or a butters notification required based on the current regulations if they wanted to develop that property.
Under the R2 regs.
Correct, with those densities.
Right.
So yes, that is a different number of total units, but that does not necessarily.
Well, currently it's one property, correct?
Right.
So it would still require subdividing.
Right, so we're changing the number of units on the property. If they wanted to do that, put in a road, private road, public road. But the development of that property into multiple structures would be allowed by right under the subdivision regulations. So the MFDD process is a little bit confusing because it's called the multifamily development district. But under the PRD, it is not multifamily. So I guess one of the points I want to make is the development of that parcel in its entirety would be allowed by right under the current regulations.
Subdivision is not by right.
It's by right. Subdivision is by right. You cannot, if they meet the regulations, there's no hearing, you are obligated to approve. Yes, they have to meet the regulations, but there's no place for where they don't have to meet the regulations. So for the purposes of this, they would have to provide road frontage and all those setbacks. But the idea is the whole property becomes developed in some way by right. The PRD does not provide for multifamily development, right? So yes, we're not talking about a property, but everything that they have said so far is that they intend to build single-family homes. So if this regulation were to be denied and they then had to provide the bonuses, or they couldn't purchase the bonuses and they had to provide the open space, but they still needed the units, right? They still need that unit to make the development make sense because housing costs are astronomical. What they could do is say, we're going to come in and do a different style structure. And so you eliminate the single family detached and you then see condos or townhouses, et cetera, because the density calculation is not proposed to be changed. So this amendment won't change that, right? So they could come back and say, okay, well, you don't want us to buy our way out of the open space, but we still need to get 30, 20, 40, whatever number of units. But now that we have to provide the density on site, the open space on site, we've got to switch these single family homes to be duplex or triplex condos, right? Because we still need the units and the regs as they stand today allow that. So I want to just kind of state for everybody sort of what approval or denial of this means, because the denial of this doesn't change the number of units they can get. And it doesn't necessarily obligate them to build this multifamily, even though that's what the zone says. And again, we're talking about, and there is a part of this that you need to be thinking about from a pro-housing standpoint. And we're talking about this later, right? But the changes to 8002. Everything we've seen at the state level has been pro-housing. They keep cramming these mandates down the town's throats because they have seen that the state as a whole is not housing friendly. We want to keep everything the way that it is, but the way that it is not necessarily what the market is demanding right now. And so these changes, just like last year, just like the affordable housing plans, now what will be called housing growth plans, which will be established by the COGS and sent down to the municipalities, are all based upon regionally and statewide municipalities not being open-minded to housing types. So in this case, the 8002 amendments are not going to apply to what we're talking about here because of the number of units, but essentially by right up to 16 units is now part of what they're looking at. We have an affordable housing plan this commission adopted. We have a POCD, which is what you're considering this amendment to. And so you do need to be thinking with a pro-housing mindset because that's what those documents say we are supposed to be doing. And so I recognize that sounds like advocacy, and it is advocating for housing, not necessarily in this property or You may not support what it is they ultimately come back to if you approve this, and that's your right. But the only thing we're talking about here is how someone establishes the context, or the physical context of the development. So I just want to make sure that we kind of have that level set, so we don't get ahead of ourselves as far as what goes into making this decision one way or another. I'll get off my soapbox now.
All right, if no one has anything else, I'll entertain a motion to continue the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing on application PZ 2025-29. Line Street Estates LLC's request for a text amendment till our next meeting, January 13th.
We have a motion to continue the public hearing. Do we have a second?
Second.
Dave on that? Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The hearing is continued till January 13th.
The next one. Here's your gift card.
Thank you, sir. That was so nice of you. Your poems are fun. I really like them. You're really talented.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
We still have more things on our agenda, so please be considerate of.
You have to guess the place that she's talking about. That last time I guessed, showcased the cinemas is what it, yes, the dog trial area, Clarity. And I was right.
You printed this?
Yeah.
Certificate.
Did that already, you said?
Like, tree, they're not, you know,
Right.
do you have to kind of,
Listen to the OLR between the lines.
it's fun. She's talented.
Yeah, I thought
This is partnership. I just printed off, I just.
Yeah.
What we're talking.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, next thing we have is an overview of HB. Excuse me, if you want to have a conversation, could you please take it in the hall? HB 002, this is the new housing bill that was signed into law. Mike, you want to take us through this?
Loud. So during the initial legislative session that happened in the summertime, we heard a lot about HB 5002, which was a bill that had some stronger mandates and instructions to municipalities regarding housing. That bill was passed, but the governor did not sign it, and so it was effectively vetoed. The special session process, which was underway not long ago, is a little bit different in that it does not have any public input. So when the legislature goes into public special session, there is no testimony that can be provided by anybody. It's closed, and, you know, I guess that may be some of the rationale behind it. But what is in front of you, there's a few summaries available now. I printed off what I thought was the easiest to understand. But basically, the governor signed just before Thanksgiving HB 8002, which is the revised version of the housing bill. A lot of the things that people were most concerned about in 5002 were removed. But there's still some things in it that are sort of important to note. So I'm going to kind of just give you a quick overview, kind of thumbnail sketch of some of that stuff in my reading. And a lot of this will still kind of shake out once we hear from the COGS, because there's been a fair amount of authority kind of placed on them. So I guess I'm going to take you through kind of in the order that this is, just for clarity. And I think we'll skip some of the stuff that isn't necessary. So the first one talks about incentives for home buying. Those are, again, programs related to home purchases, not anything to do with the local level. It then talks about rental assistance and open choice pilot programs. Again, this is Department of Housing. So move to the second page, which is under creation. So again, in the context of housing, And I think the first one to note is the second one, the Housing Growth Grant Plan. So grant program. So it gets into it later on, but essentially what it now has to happen is the affordable housing plans that we were supposed to have adopted, and every community, including most communities, including East Windsor, did, sort of are replaced with housing growth plans. These are going to be adopted at the regional level by the COG. The town can choose to opt out of that and adopt their own. But this is something that the Council of Governments will be looking at and sort of establish to take a more regional approach to housing growth and facilitating new housing units. So this housing growth grant program is part of that, which is why it's not starting until fiscal year 28. And it allows municipalities that demonstrate they're making progress towards their housing growth plans or have the transit-oriented community to apply for funds related to the public infrastructure. So again, if you're changing your zoning regulations to allow for density or to allow for certain things related to housing, but you need additional sewer infrastructure, maybe bus infrastructure, whatever, it allows for some of that stuff to be offset through this new grant program.
Is it 100% offset?
This is all established by the legislature without any
Funding.
real consultation from anybody. So this is essentially the most that anybody knows at this point.
Are the growth plans supposed to be in prior to fiscal year 28 so that you can show you're progressing on your growth plan?
Well, they have to be started. I don't know about the adoption because there's there's a little bit of confusion about the timeline from that.
Okay.
But if CROG writes it, then they write it. It's only if we opt out, then we have to do a growth plan.
Right.
So how can you opt out? Because we went to the AquaTurf, remember, and Simsbury was screaming that they didn't want the housing plan. I'm sure Greenwich and all those higher, and they didn't want to.
That was under 5,002. And the reason why most municipalities really didn't like that is because that proposed and that they were going to basically issue each town a fair share number of units. So they were going to say, Simsbury, your number of units is 32.
Yeah.
But
They were
the
gonna
number
just-
for East Windsor was huge.
But what?
We already met the requirements already, though.
No, but in that bill,
So that's all gone. So the mandating in the bill, the number of units by town is been removed.
So how you opt? So you don't have to do anything anymore? You can.
So you opt out of participating in a regional health growth plan.
Okay, you have to come up with your own plan.
And you have to come up with your own plan.
Okay, I want 2 houses.
Well, the contents of the plan and what it achieves can't change. It's just that
Okay.
you are saying, I don't want to be part of what the region is doing. I don't want CROG to be in the driver's seat of our plan. We're going to write our own for East Windsor.
Me and Mike on those CROG meeting, we listened to those guys.
Yeah. So,
Greenwich and have Trumbull do it for them.
yeah, so you can't change what has to be in the plan. You just decide whether you want to participate. And
will the plan have quotas of how many new houses, low-income houses you have to build? It was like a huge number for East Windsor in the bill that the governor wouldn't sign.
yeah, so the analysis, I think, and how you get there, I don't know if it's been.
Because all the Greenwich donors weren't going to donate to his campaign.
But it was,
That's how that happened.
it's huge.
Yeah. See, section 4.6. So it's municipalities must create their own housing growth plan or participate in a council of government directed regional housing growth plan, which provides detailed information on how a town will increase the number of affordable units, deed restricted affordable units. So I don't have the.
Two questions. In the original bill, they had that commercial properties could be developed as of right.
Right.
Affordable housing. It's still in this one, averted?
If any property that falls within the zone, which is allows commercial or mixed uses, as of right, up to 16 units.
Regardless of what percentage the town already has of affordable housing?
Yes, because.
No parking, right? They can,
That's
Yeah, parking requirements are gone now.
Oh, yeah, remember that? Remember when we saw a CROG and there people were walking to the development?
Yeah, they're talking about,
yeah.
some people don't want a car. They don't
School.
need it.
They have access.
Yeah.
Right.
But there's like mass transit here, so.
Which is why you'd never
Yeah.
see that be an issue here.
That was Crog's big plan in the meeting. They said people, no cars, they have their own different train
They
stations.
showed us a development out in Arizona or something that had a train stop right at the development and nobody owned a car. There were no cars in the development at all. Everybody rode the train.
It's a train station, but it's a long walk
Yeah,
for us to.
that's never gonna fly here.
But yeah,
So this is middle housing development, not deed restricted. So this is someone can build on a commercially zoned piece of property, a middle housing development.
It's middle housing,
The less than 16 units.
okay?
So this, we're not speaking the language that I read and I looked at a couple, this is not limited to deed restricted affordable units. So someone could buy a piece of property in the B2 and they could put 14 units on that by right,
market rate.
market rate.
The guy on Route 5 that used to be a salon, then he said he was a coffee shop and he wanted to make it into multi apartments and we said no, now has a right to do whatever he wants.
I'm not,
Remember that house?
Yeah, the bun, that was behind the back.
Yeah.
I know you're talking about.
Yep.
I did Kentucky Fried Chicken in the back over there.
It's
The bank.
Tugas was,
Sugas, that's
Yeah.
right, Mr.
and he got totally perturbed that night when we said no, that it was supposed to be a mix. So now he has the right to do whatever he wants there.
Well, it's a conversion. It has to be an existing building.
Yeah, it is an
It is an
existing
existing
building.
And
It was a hair salon downstairs and
Yep.
he lived above
It was right next to that
and he wanted to.
garage. The garage right next door.
It was a-
South of Jim, Balch, the old Balch
Yeah.
Pond.
Oh,
Way fallow.
There every
before that.
summer, you know,
Wrong building.
I was thinking of a different property.
the people are gonna
So,
complain.
so to me, Mike, just say, if you don't like our plan, you can come up with your own plan,
correct.
pretty much.
Right, but what the plan says won't, you have control over the plan, but you can't then just change sort of the outcome, right? The purpose of the plan is established in the actual language of the bill. The bill itself is 100 pages.
Yeah.
Affordable housing.
So because the town takes control of the plan does not mean you can necessarily change where the plan has to take the community. You may have some control over the metrics, but it still has to be a housing growth.
Does this take anything away from our control over deed restricted housing?
Your control.
Well, I mean, it's fine before, if you met a certain number.
Oh, 8-30G?
Yeah.
No, that does
Doesn't
not
change that
change.
at all.
You are still not subject to an 8-30G application.
Okay.
Where the developer has the right to do it.
Yeah, right. We cannot deny.
What about deadline?
Deadline.
Any deadline, that's just
Well, so
20 years, 30 years.
Yeah, so one of the things that was a little bit confusing, I was reading, is that you may end up in a situation where, based upon when the COG gets started on the plan, if the town decides to opt out, they may not actually have the time to
Until-
develop their own plan, because the timeline for how that kind of gets started is not defined. The bill itself becomes effective, all of these other things, the commercial lots, parking, et cetera, is effective July 1 of 2026.
You do have a section in here about 830-2.
That's for the moratoriums.
Okay.
So if towns show progress towards the housing growth plans, they can earn additional credits towards an 8-30G moratorium, which we would not do here because we're already not subject.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we may be subject by the time we build all these new apartments.
I think we looked and so far, no.
No, yeah.
Okay.
So
Chuck.
You got plenty of affordable housing.
So for commercial lots, zoning must allow the up to the 2 through 9 plexes on mixed use developments on any commercial or mixed use zoned lot by summary review, which is essentially as of right. You have discretion over health and safety standards. So
They can't require open space or trees or anything. They can just pave the whole thing.
well, you can't necessarily require that they provide open space, but as of right doesn't mean I can do what I want. As of right means
You
they
gotta meet the
regulations.
setback regs, all the
Good.
So
the impervious coverage, all
Right.
of that stuff still applies.
So the key is to make sure that you amend your regulations so that a development
Well,
of-
yeah,
Well, not necessarily ugly, but that you deal with coverage, you deal with landscaping, you deal with setbacks, so that they still, it's not the 8-30G process where they come in and ignore the regs. But you have to have a process that it is allowed by right, and the regulations would have those criteria in them. So you have some control, but it's still limited to some degree. You wouldn't want to make it so restrictive that it couldn't happen, right? Every building has to be brick, it has to be no greater than 1 story, you know,
That kind.
but you have some control.
Has to be facing south.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Solar panels.
So the other piece, I'm just going through the highlights again, is that for manufactured homes, so zoning must treat all manufactured homes the same as site-built homes. The current law requires this, currently allows this if they are at least 22 feet wide. So the current law under PA 2129, if you put in a mobile manufactured home that's at least 22 feet wide, that the town has to consider it a stick-built house.
Yeah.
So that 22-foot minimum dimension has been eliminated. So now any mobile manufactured home that someone wants to put on a property, including mobile tiny houses, single wide trailers, small modulars, are all the same under zoning as stick-built. They still have to meet health code, they still have to meet the building code, but you can't say, well, no, you can't put a trailer on the property.
Yeah.
If it meets the
But you
criteria.
don't have a right to build a trailer park with a whole bunch.
No, that's a use, correct. And you can't put a trailer in the backyard of your house, right? That's a separate issue.
Accessory unit.
Well, we allow an ADU, but you can't have an ADU be a trailer. So there's some discretion there, but
But
we
a
have-
trailer versus a manufactured home is something different.
right, yes.
Yeah, they make prefab.
Yeah.
So, yeah, mobile manufactured home, because there's a separate
Yeah, they
code that to
builds it and then they pour a foundation and stick it on it.
can't go down to the RV place
Come and
here,
drag it in.
drag it over and drop it.
So that way-
Good to go.
Yeah.
Right, these are still structures designed for permanent occupancy. So, parking, I think we talked a little bit about no housing may be denied solely, because of its failure to conform with requirements related to off-street parking. This is largely because towns have started shifting away based on all these other mandates to say, well, you need to provide a certain number of parking spaces and we don't think you have enough, so we're going to deny it. Again,
But-
people don't,
Country, you have to have a car.
right, which is why
Live without a park.
Which is why you will never see a development proposed here that doesn't have parking. You just won't. Because who's going to live in a town that has no public transit and does not provide parking? It's just not gonna happen.
Park at the school, or the way they park at, the annex. You don't have to have parking, you just park in the town property.
Yeah, but I mean, you're talking somebody, you're
Big
talking,
development is.
$300,000+ per unit construction cost. Nobody's going to sink
Without.
millions of dollars into a development and say, find a spot down the road, you're good to go. That they don't have any control over, right? It just,
Won't be able to sell it.
so there's some limits to the number, right? 1 space per studio. So if it's more than 16 units, you can still require parking. You can still mandate the parking. Under 16, you cannot. But it's 1 space per 1 bedroom, 2 spaces for 2 or more. Again,
Yeah.
more than you would need for the way that things are parked at this point. Municipalities can establish parking zones, which are sort of these little carve out areas which can't exceed a certain percentage of the total size of the town, that essentially these parking minimums don't apply. Like, let's say there's an area in town in more urban centers where parking is a huge issue, but you can't just have all these people building more developments and contributing to that. So you'd adopt this sort of parking zone, and that would give you control over the minimum parking for essentially all of the developments. Again, that doesn't apply here. They've reduced the ability for towns to accept fees in lieu of parking spaces. So again, I don't think that's anything that we're going to see here. There's language related to hostile architecture.
That's the.
So you may have seen those. Have you ever seen a bench in a city that has sort of these raised sections? So it looks like 3 seats, but it's just a bench. The idea is they've designed that so it's not lay down.
Okay.
New York City all the time.
Yeah. So those are designed so someone can't sleep on that bench. So this law prohibits the installation of hostile architecture. again, not something we're going to see here. Requires towns of 15,000 or more to establish fair rent commissions. That is not something applicable here. And then, yeah, I think lastly, the regional municipal housing growth plans. It's going to establish a new oversight entity called the Council on Housing Development to sort of coordinate these efforts. And then there will be funds given to the councils of government to provide for some planning and technical support related to this. The grant program will become established as of 2028. And as of fiscal year 2027, towns that demonstrate progress on adopting these plans will receive increased school reimbursement.
Oh,
Well, that's-
here's your incentive. Yeah.
There's also going to be a statewide wastewater capacity study. A lot of town.
Can't we?
Well, there's,
On the sewage treatment plant capacity.
the issue with sewer treatment is that, and I don't know if there's any state perspective on it, but unlike under 8-30G or when something is an as of right development, a water pollution control authority is not mandated through some zoning regulation or through the statutes that we deal with to allocate those units simply because they were asked for. So if someone comes in and they come to you and they say, I'm building my 16 units, you can't say no. You say, okay, we can't say no. And then they go to the WPCA and want approval to connect. WPCA is not mandated by chapter one.
Want the fees for taking the sewer?
I don't know. What if the WPCA,
Can't handle the capacity.
Yeah,
or what if the WPC, let's be a little bit more small town Connecticut. What if the WPCA simply is not pro apartments? Many communities have used their sewer capacity and their willingness to provide units as a way to dissuade a development that they don't want.
I could see if it meant you had to spend huge amount of money to build another sewage
Sure.
treatment plant.
Sure. Yeah.
If you have the capacity.
But what if you have, I'm dealing with this in a town right now, they have maybe capacity for 500 more units. Someone's coming in equivalent, right? And so that could be commercial, that could be residential, whatever. Someone's coming in and wants to develop an apartment complex that may be 250 to 300 units. They're saying, well, gee, I don't know, that's an awful lot of the capacity we have left. I don't think we want to give you that many. Maybe we're good with 100.
Yeah, it restricts them from developing.
So now what they've effectively done,
Put in low flow toilets and
they could say whatever they want. They could say, we're going to charge you X, Y, and Z, but they could also say no.
And that gets stopped before they even get here. Right?
After.
Yeah.
They could say, we'll give you 100, but you want 275. We're not comfortable with that.
But don't most applicants go to her first and all that stuff before?
They should,
They
yes.
should,
They
yeah.
should have those conversations ahead of time, but there are a lot of towns that have agreements with other municipalities. And so, town A sends their affluent to town B's treatment plant, which then adds another layer of, well, do we want to add capacity to our system? There's a lot of issues sort of statewide with how these things are handled. And so they're trying to get a sense of where we are from a state level. And there's also something in the POCD statutes which talk about sewer avoidance areas
where
where
you're
town,
to do septic.
right. Well, what if your whole town is a sewer avoidance area? There are towns in Connecticut which they have that.
Isn't Old
We got the man in the front row right here.
Old Saybrook is on septic, but
Yeah,
But from a policy standpoint, towns are saying, we don't want any density which could require this townwide, period. And so how do you create any density or any type of development other than the traditional single-family homes?
Do any developers sue? They could, I guess, right?
I have not heard of any case where a developer has sued a WPCA and basically said, you must give me what you. I'm not saying that it hasn't happened, but I've legitimately never heard of it. So it's become a way to sort of
Crush it.
And I'm not saying that's the case, and I'm not saying that WPCA's sit around and say, ooh, we're in control here with little crowns on their head, but
What did they add in this bill that now, you're just saying they're just going to do a study of it, right?
they're going to be establishing a sort of
Capacity study?
statewide to sort of get a sense, because if town A is saying, well, we got to send this here, and they're saying, we don't have capacity, meanwhile, there's a town on the other side that has way more
You
capacity.
know, if you have connectivity and all that other
to
stuff.
pump it up a mountain.
But you spend,
And get agreed.
sort of throwing money at the wall and all these, everybody's increasing their plant a little, here, here, and it's sort of the idea of maybe we should think more regionally about how we deal with this so that we're not
So it's like, fine.
double and triple and quadruple, increasing capacities because there's only so much housing the region and the state's going to end up with. We need to obtain that capacity at that level. We don't need to overbuild all these individual little mini plants. CROG had looked at the idea of establishing a regional treatment sewer authority.
Oh.
And I have different thoughts about CROG and why they want to do that. And I don't know where that went, but, so, yeah.
I can tell you that East Windsor does have some concerns about development and that size of the pipes that are in the road. If they can't handle the flow, the ratepayers are not gonna pay for doing anything about it at all. So it's gonna be, if you wanna build,
You gotta keep
Do it.
bigger pipe.
Yeah.
It's just no different than saying, hey, you're coming down 140, you gotta bring water.
Yep.
That's on you.
Exactly. The water company will not pay for it.
No.
They will only collect fees later.
Yeah.
So the statewide wastewater capacity study must be completed by July 1 of 2026.
You.
It'll be OPM, DEP, and the Council on Housing Development.
Fantastic.
Um,
Have a good time.
So the regional housing needs assigns COGS the responsibility to set affordable housing unit goals for each town in its planning region, informed by OPM housing needs assessments and technical support. The one thing that I saw in another review that was a little bit sort of red flaggy to me is that the establishment and the management of the housing growth plans was going to be guided by the chief elected officer.
Reflective.
changes.
Governor?
No, like it would be Jason in this case,
Yeah.
which didn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm not sure why that's the case. That may have been a local sort of, we want control thing. And so they said, okay, fine, we'll give it to the chief elected official. Maybe there's language in the bill that says, or their designee.
Look at the bottom.
Not in this one, but it was in West Cogs, I think.
But now you just said something about the COGS are gonna set affordable housing
They're gonna
criteria.
take those numbers, break them into pieces that
Yes.
then get broken.
So does that give them the ability to raise the number above the preset levels now for the 830G?
Yes, so they'll say East Windsor has to create X number of units. You're still not eligible for the 8-30G.
Even though we have already an abundant, they can just dictate that we have to create more.
So the 10%, the 10% is not a goal. The 10% is just when you are no longer eligible for the 8-30G. So the
developers control.
Right. So the 10% just, again, turns off that sort of exposure point. But the idea that towns should shoot to be at 10% that's
way bigger.
There's no,
they want it
way bigger. Correct.
Because they wanted like 5,000 additional units in East Windsor. The number in that first bill was huge.
It's going to be 5,000. I don't even.
It's huge.
That's the number of units we have, period.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe 500, maybe.
no, it was big. It was shockingly big.
So I was going to look at, where is this?
So you play nice in a sandbox, you get rewarded. Pretty much what they're telling you. Okay, come like Trump.
You get all these unfunded incentives, yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at how they were gonna.
And towns like Greenwich Hills got that, we don't care. We don't want your money. We don't.
That,
We don't want your money.
get land there, the people own 10-acre lots. It's like,
So,
That's
so it looks like, so I'm looking at several analyses that were done and trying to pull together what would make the most sense. And under one of the other councils of governments, because Prague has not done this yet, they have the good, the bad, and the ugly. Under the ugly, they say that the fair share language that allocates housing by grand list per capita in housing numbers instead of proximity to jobs, transportation, and infrastructure. So the idea is the way that it was established, they're going to go out and say, you have to have X, you have to have Y, you have to have Z. And
Exactly.
not necessarily right size it for,
What's available.
right. So it's,
The infrastructure.
Yeah.
It's like you have open space in East Windsor, look at all this farmland, fill it with low-income housing.
right. So it still remains to be, there's a lot that remains to be seen with some of this stuff. Yeah, so they're the one that say first selectman, mayor, town managers oversee the regional housing growth plan and municipal allocations, not the state. So they're calling that the good because that means it doesn't come from the state. Just means it doesn't come to the
Yeah.
PZC.
But it's the same end.
Yeah, so they're saying the bad is it is unclear how OPM will create state housing need amounts and regional allocations. So it sounds to me like the OPM may say the region has to generate X, and then the COG will then say, okay, we have to create 3,000 within our region, 42 towns. How do we get there?
But this is driven all housing or just affordable housing?
So some of the things like the mandates for the as of right, 2 to 9 plex or under 15, those are all housing. The regional housing growth plans are for capital A, deed restricted, affordable.
Because even though the fact that, we've got applications for, 500 more units in this town, doesn't really matter because it's not deed restricted.
Correct, right. So what many towns do when they're seeing increased pressures, they adopt inclusionary zoning requirements so that you either have to provide 10% or more of the units within a development as restricted, or you have to pay a fee so that the town can then create those units, right? So with Trig's application, if you had that regulation and you say you need to create 10%, and he says, well, I don't want to because most developers don't. There's a lot of work related to administering that. You could say, okay, pay the fee.
And then could the fee go to Park Hill to
Yes.
an expansion?
Yes. The fee could go to Park Hill to renovate. It doesn't
have to be new
to
units.
affordable. Yes. It does not have to be purely to facilitate the creation of new units. It can go to the renovation of existing. Maybe they need ADA upgrades. I don't know.
Whatever, but that wouldn't be bad.
The problem is, unless you're allowing really substantial densities, it just doesn't work. That conversation will cause the development to fail. Yeah, I mean, you're getting 1-to-1. Most towns will say if you pay the fee, it's at whatever cost of the construction is. So you're probably talking $200,000 to $300,000 a unit.
Wow.
Whoa.
Because
And we'll build.
so I guess Mansfield allows that. They 20%. They probably have $3 million in their affordable housing trust fund. But they allow density bonuses substantial enough that the math still works.
That's why they build all those high-rise units out there.
So they're right. So that, the standard of Four Corners is over 500 units. So they're allowing for to get enough units for the developer to be able to justify handing a check for $1.1 million to the town.
They fill every inch with apartments and pay up.
Which then they go and hand to the housing authority, and there's another development that's going up that's fully restricted. It'll be I don't know if it's age restricted as well, but it'll be deed restricted. So, I mean, that's what you have to do, but it oftentimes will kill a project because the costs are just
no money.
so high.
And the level of affordable is town by town, correct?
So HUD sets it by region, so think county. So, yeah, there's some adjustments they might adjust for, if you're talking about Hartford region, they might adjust it for like a Simsbury, Glastonbury.
Fairfield County affordable could still be $800,000, $900,000.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's going to be 30% of 80% AMI.
Yeah.
Yes, but that's established by region. So yes, someone that's eligible could be making double. They could live in Stamford in an affordable unit and then come here and likely not be eligible. So the HUD changes those numbers annually.
Gotcha. Okay.
We're gonna have to make some zoning changes probably. And, there's been some
Well, a lot of it,
discussion.
if add this, commercial development into housing, then it's kind of sticking in residential where it doesn't exist currently. And
Yeah,
and honestly, what if somebody wanted to stick some housing units into an industrial park or something like that?
yeah. I mean,
That would be public.
well, so,
Because if they're doing
Well,
something with emissions, you're gonna breathe
well,
it.
it's just, I mean,
Right.
so one of the communities that I working with was trying to think about that. And in 5002, I don't know the full language here, there was no definition of commercial. And so somebody suggested, okay, fine, we're going to zone everything industrial. I don't know if that gets you anywhere, right? Changing all your commercial zoning to industrial zoning and then leaving very limited areas, but
depending on what the use table, we have to rework that as well, too.
I mean, I think the idea is that it's very self-regulating. If you have a development that is not going to be an attractive place for people to live, the developer is not going to spend millions of dollars to build it, to then have it be next to some god-awful or something that smells or is loud or has lights. It's just,
But you need zones for that. You
Yeah.
need to let people do those things.
right. And,
Away from houses.
yeah. So the idea is, the regulated use, a lot of times we have uses which you can't put this within a certain distance to a church or to a school or to a park, right? The church, the school and the park are the regulated use, right? So we might tell someone who wants to do some terrible industrial use, you can't be next to a church. That's not appropriate.
Right.
But if that terrible use was first, we wouldn't tell the church, you can't choose to be there.
Yeah.
Right, because they're
It's the
opting,
same idea here.
you're opting.
Yeah, so if in this case, that terrible use exists and someone opts to develop the adjacent parcel for residential.
Like we had a church over here in the package store. Remember when Paul's package store went in there? The big deal was the church. That was
But it's
about 10
also
years ago. I don't know
health
if you-
impact for the resident living next to an industrial thing with lots of chemicals and explosion risk and whatever. It's like, there's a reason why
Yeah.
we set that in a zone.
I had it happen to me where, was managing a property that they put affordable housing next to a trucking terminal and,
The emissions and
Well,
the banging of the,
it's an overnight operation, so there's backup and there's noise. So then the next time when we had to go to the town for a permit, they made a condition of approval that we had to put up, sound barrier fencing.
Well, so the other, I mean, based on what we're talking about here, there is case law which says that, commissions, whether it be inland, wetlands, P and Z is not, they quote, are not their own mini EPAs, right? So,
Yeah.
so idling and those types of things, we can't really
Regulate.
They,
regulate.
Yeah.
noise, they were saying that.
I mean, USA Hall and put up a wall
Yeah.
in the back.
But they were coming in
Yeah.
to an
Yeah.
established
Yeah.
neighborhood,
Yeah.
but when you
You're
have a commercial activity
right.
and somebody puts in housing right next door, now it became a hardship.
Houses were there
Yeah.
first.
No, the activity was there first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
All right.
stirred up enough trouble for them.
That's all right.
Does anyone else have anything else they want to discuss?
No.
Wish everybody a pleasant holiday season and
Yeah, you also. Yeah.
Christmas. We will reconvene next year. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
The motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
For a vote, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned at 8:28.